Two last buttons to press. Okay, now we should be live everywhere. So let's just close this one. And click on this one. Looks like we got a bunch of people here waiting. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the what's new in Photoshop. Sorry again for the brief delay getting up and running here, but this was a time change that I wasn't originally going to do. So I was originally going to do 4 o'clock. Then I remember it's Wednesday, which I normally do 3 o'clock, but it was after 3 o'clock. So I was like, oh crap, I got to do it now. All right. So with that said, welcome everyone. Hello, Victoria, Bernice, Deb. Great to see you as well. Great to see everyone here. I'm streaming everywhere. So this should be on, this should be live on Facebook. It should be live on YouTube. It should be live on Behance. It should be live on LinkedIn. It should be live everywhere. And speaking of Twitter, let's do one more. Get it live on Twitter, and then this will be the biggest multicast I've ever done. All right, here we go. One last step here. And settings. And we're up and running there. And here we go. And turn the mic down. Features in Photoshop. And then we can start some Photoshop love. Photoshop Love Fest. Okay, that's it. Okay, so back to you. So what I love to do is take you through not only what I showed in the keynote, but also some of the things I showed that weren't in the keynote, that I didn't have the opportunity to show. So let's start on my computer. Let's switch over to the desktop. And I've got my computer up and running. I will be showing some of the same images that I used in the keynote, but we'll go a little bit deeper because in the keynote, I literally only had like 7 minutes in the max keynote to show everything. And that's why I couldn't show everything. So we're going to see some features that I didn't get a chance to show, go a little bit deeper on the ones that I did get a chance to show, and we'll go from there. All right, so with that said, let's start off with an enhancement to a feature that I introduced actually last year. So one of the features I introduced last year was the fact that you did not need to hold down the Shift key anymore to do free transform, to perform a free transform and have it be proportional, because that was the reason you were holding down the Shift key in the first place all these years. But what if you didn't have to do it that way anymore? Well, that was great for me and a lot of people, but some people didn't like that. So the team, within the last few months, actually introduced a preference where you could go into preferences and turn it off. Say, nope, I like the old behavior. Go back to the way it was. That's the way I always liked it. Don't change things on me. Just, just keep it going the way it was. And that's great. You can turn it off in the preferences. But what if you like it sometimes and you don't like it other times? Maybe there are times where you don't want it on, and there are times where you do want it on. Instead of having to go switch the preference every time, now it's a toggleable, is that a word? A thing you can toggle in the control panel. So I'm going to do a free transform, and there's a little link symbol. It's always been there, but now the maintain aspect ratio is sticky. So what that means is, while that is enabled, when I do a free transform, when I do a free transform, there we go, it scales it. And when I uncheck that, it stretches it. Okay, just like it has always done. But the difference now is that if I leave that unchecked, it stays unchecked until I check it going again. So for people that say, nope, turn that off, turn it off, just uncheck that, and you will always have to hold down the Shift key. So when it's enabled, as you might guess, the Shift key then does the opposite. So the Shift key stretches. I'm holding down the Shift key now. And without the Shift key, I get a regular transform. Okay, so again, I'm going to undo that and go back to it. So that's the first new thing, is that this new widget for maintain aspect ratio is now, it's now consistent. It stays sticky. It stays on or off depending on what you do. And secondly, the other big thing, or the big problem with this in the past, was that even when this feature was first introduced, forget whether you like it or not, it wasn't consistent, meaning that on pixel layers, you didn't have to hold down the shift key, but on vector layers, you did have to hold down the shift key. And it was just like, even with it on, it wasn't consistent. So now the team has made it more consistent across the board, and you get to control it just by clicking that link symbol. So that's feature number one. Feature number two, this is something I did show in the keynote, and it's the warp capability. So you've had warp for quite a while in Photoshop, but the problem with it in the past, before this update, was that you always, when you clicked warp, you got a grid on your transform. You got a 3x3 square grid, and that's all you ever got. You couldn't add more points. You couldn't take points away. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't make a 4x4 grid. You couldn't do anything else. So now you get, first of all, when I turn it on, I don't get any grid because it's off by default. But you can now go back to the same 3x3 grid you used to get, or 4x4 grid, or 5x5 grid, or whatever. If that's not enough, you can still go in and put in your own custom grid points. So I can just put in a point there and say I need a point wherever I need it to be. I need a point there. I need as many points as I want where I want them, and that's the big thing. All right, so in addition to not only being able to create your own custom grid, putting points and intersections wherever you need them to be, the other thing is that you can now hold down your shift key with while you're in this mode and select multiple points. Now, keep in mind, I have a point selected already, so that what may trip you up is that when you make that selection, it will deselect the points you already had selected. So don't forget to go back and reselect those. So if you have points selected, that behavior should go back in and reselect those. So then I can warp that any way I want. I can stretch it. I can make it wiggle. I forgot a couple points anyway, so I can go ahead and add those back in. And let's see, is it not selected? There we go. So now those are selected. Even though they're not visually selected, it's selecting them. All right, there we go. There we go. So I got them all selected now. I can do whatever I want with whatever part of this flower or object that I would want to do it with. So that is the new warp capability in Photoshop, your own custom grid, your own points wherever you want, selecting multiple points by holding down the shift key. Remember to turn back on the ones you might have had already selected if they deselect. And that is that. I'm going to switch to a different image here. I was going to use a different image for the next one. Let's see if I can find it real quick. I can use this one too. Okay, so the next one up is the Object Select tool. So I did show this in the keynote as well. There's a brand new tool, but I will mention a couple things about it. So first of all, you may not see that tool on Photoshop if you've customized your tool panel. Because when you customize your tool panel, you're turning off tools you don't use, and new tools don't get added automatically. So when I first installed the new version of Photoshop and it used my existing tools, the Object Select wasn't there. I had to come down to the bottom here, and I could find it this way. It was in the list of tools that I had not enabled yet. But if you go back up to your Edit toolbar, then you can move the Object Select tool from the disabled tools over to or inactive tools over to your tool panel wherever you want it to be. So therefore, it is there from that point on. And then don't forget to save this as a preset so you can always load it back in. All right, so what is the Object Select tool? The Object Select tool is, and people make jokes about this, but it's true. Seems like with every new version of Photoshop, there's a new way to make a selection, and that's not a bad thing. The more ways, since selections are such an important part of Photoshop, the more ways you have to select something, the better. So Object Select, just one more way to make a selection. With that said, there are two modes for this tool. It starts off in the rectangle, which I have selected at the top here. And if I were to make a selection of, let's say, the bagel, just half of the bagel, it uses Adobe Sensei, artificial intelligence, machine learning to figure out that even though I made a rectangular selection around that bagel to select, it says, oh, you're trying to select the bagel. I get it. If I were to make another rectangular selection around a tomato, it says, oh, you want the tomato. I get it. Now, of course, it's machine learning, AI-based. That doesn't mean it's going to get everything perfectly every single time, but it works most of the time really well. So, for example, if I select this leaf, well, it got the leaf, but it started to get a little bit of that salt or whatever that is next to it because it says, oh, that looks like it's connected to it. I'll get that too. So again, it's a AI-based, Adobe Sensei-based thing, so it will be as good as it could be. Now, if there's something more intricate you're trying to select, you may want to switch over to the lasso. Like if you're trying to select things and not select other things, then you can switch over to the lasso version of that tool, and you can go in and make a selection around individual objects. And again, the object select tool will make that selection. So if I was trying to select both of these leaves, for example, I haven't tried this before. Let's see what happens. It got both leaves and it made them as individual selections. It didn't select the space in between. If I wanted to get both tomatoes, using the lasso let me get both tomatoes. So in a case where something is maybe too close to something and you don't want it to accidentally pick that up too, you get the lasso, especially with a stylus, and you get the ability to go in and select just the objects you want. So the new object select tool is freaking amazing. I can't wait to keep using that going forward. All right, next up, I'm going to close this one. And that's the one I used before in the object select tool demo in the keynote. Let's switch over to this one. All right, this one's kind of cool. This one kind of got snuck in, and most people still don't know about this or talk about this one. And while it will look magical, and it looked magical when I demoed this in the keynote, it's really simple. So let me explain what's going to happen. I'm going to switch over to the Properties panel. And in the Properties panel, there's a new button called Remove Background. Oh my God, it's a button now. It's that easy. First requirement, I didn't get a chance to say this in the keynote, first requirement is that it cannot be on the background. It has to be a layer. So either convert your background to a layer or create a layer. So now that that's a layer, so it's layer 0, this button will appear and work. So what is this doing when I click it? Well, it does magic. It gets rid of the background. Well, technically it didn't get rid of it. The background's still there, it just masked it. So that's great. That's even better, that it's non-destructive. But what's it really doing? It's doing something you could have done all along. And some of you were doing it, you were just doing it manually all along. It did two things for me. It used select subject to select the subject. And it would be the equivalent of once that selection's made, if I held down the Option or Alt key and clicked Make a Mask. That's it, 2 steps. So it's just doing those 2 steps for you. It's making the selection based on select subject, and it's masking it all in one button. That's it. So for example, if I go to the next photo, because again, seeing is believing, and we'll just make this a little bigger. It's on a layer, so it'll work. Click Remove Background, 2 steps in one button, select subject, create a mask. Done. So that's what it's doing. Now, when does it work great? It works great when select subject would work great. So if you have a subject that select subject can easily identify, awesome. If you have a subject that select subject can't easily identify or doesn't select like hair, not going to be awesome, because hair would still require you to go and select and mask out the hair, and then you'd be doing it that way. So in that case, it cannot go in and easily do this depending on the image. So someone's asking, can I please tell you what resolution you're working on, please? Well, I'm working on all the images are different resolutions. Some of them are super big, some of them are web resolution. Most of these are fairly large files from stock, so they're all over the map. Just depends. Okay, next up. Oh my God, remove background option came directly from the heavens above. Possibly, but I think it was more like engineers in San Jose. Anyway, let's go on. Now this next one, so speaking of resolution, this is a 5 gig file. It's a big file with literally hundreds of layers. or at least dozens of layers. I don't know about hundreds, but at least dozens. And what this feature is that I'm showing, I just want to make sure I can, let's click on a couple of these. Yep, okay. What this feature is it's a new way to zoom. So it would be, I think it's manually under the view menu perhaps. Yep, it's a new option called Fit Layers on Screen. There is a keyboard modifier and click to do it without having to go up to the menu. So what it's doing is it's saying whatever layer you click on the thumbnail for, I will zoom to that layer. So what this is for is this beautiful image from Isabelle LeMay has dozens, if not hundreds of layers in it, and every little element is on its own layer. And she didn't do a great job of naming the layers. They're like background copy, background copy, background copy. So I would have no idea what layer this butterfly is on, like, because it's not called butterfly or butterfly 20, because there's a bunch of butterflies in here. I wouldn't know what layers things are on. So what this lets me do is, okay, this first background copy, I have no idea what it is. Let's zoom to it. So hold down the Option key, click on the thumbnail. Oh, it's the orange flower. So now I could name that orange flower. I won't say on the right because maybe it'll move, but I can name that layer now. Okay, great. What's this next one? Background copy number 8. Beige butterfly. Now I know what it is. Okay, beige butterfly. And if you were still unsure of what the layer contained, because I don't know if it's the butterfly or the leaf or this background or the orange thing, you can hold down your Option key and then also isolate it. Just clicking the little eye so you know exactly what that layer contains. Because if you're still not sure, you can also always isolate the layer to see exactly what that layer contains. And that's now not so orange as I thought it was. It's more pinkish, blue, reddish. But anyway, you get the, oh, depends on the tint. Got it. Okay. So that is the zoom to layer capability, which under the view menu is officially called Fit Layers on Screen. All right, next up. This is one that I did not show in the keynote. So, okay, so now we're moving off the keynote stuff. That was pretty much the stuff I showed in the keynote. Let's go grab a different image here. I'm going to go in and grab, I think this is the one I want. Yep, okay, so penguins. All right, so I'm going to load a selection just for the sake of time. Select, load selection, and we'll do the left penguin. Okay, so I did the left penguin. I got it selected now. And I'm just in the background. So if I hit my delete or backspace key, you know that that does a content-aware fill. You also know that a content-aware fill is only as good as the surrounding pixels. So sometimes if there's something too close to the object you're trying to select, you end up pulling, or trying to delete, you end up pulling some of that object in. So here, let's do delete, content-aware fill, hit OK. Wait a few seconds, and that's what starts to happen. It starts to saying, oh, I'll fill it in with the, the other penguin. Great. Well, that's not great. It's not what we wanted. There were all kinds of tricks. I even had a video way back when that showed how to mask temporarily the thing you didn't want it to come over, and then do the content-aware fill, and then you could turn the mask off and bring back the other element. Well, they've worked on this in ContentAware Fill Workspace. Workspace is not new, came out last year, also didn't make it into the keynote, but they've enhanced it this year as well. So let's go up to, instead of just doing the delete or backspace, go up to your edit menu, come down to ContentAware Fill, which this is actually the workspace for it. And what it does now is there's an option to basically auto detect what shouldn't come over. In other words, auto detect what the subject is. And it's showing me a preview of what it's already done. So it's already done it. It's already going to do the right thing. All I have to do is click OK. And it automatically did the content-aware fill and got rid of the other penguin without pulling over the one next to it. So the content-aware fill workspace was there last year. What's new this year is the auto. Instead of you having to paint and tell it what not to bring over, it will do a good job of auto-detecting so that it can figure out what not to bring over. And then you go from there. Okay, next up. And hang on, let me do one more thing real quick here. All right. That is cool. All right, I agree, Jeremy, over on Behance. Let me grab one more thing over here real quick. And dun, 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 dun. All right. Okay, so next up, the next one, that was feature number 6, Enhanced Content Aware Workspace. Feature number 7 is a little thing, but it goes a long way for people that create smart objects. So for example, let's duplicate the layer, or actually, you know what? Let's undo it for a second. Oops, hang on, undo, put it back. Let's go back up to that ContentAware Fill Workspace. And I'm going to change the output to a new layer. So in other words, fill it in, but put it on a new layer when you do that. So click OK, does the same thing, but I get a new layer. All right, great. The reason I wanted that new layer was so that I can then convert these 2 layers into a smart object. So something not new, you've been doing that for years. When I convert them into a smart object, and if I double click on that smart object, I get to edit those 2 layers. So it opened up a new window with those 2 layers, and if I close that window, then I'm back to the original smart object. What's new is you now have the ability, if you right click, you have the ability to convert back to layers. So you can take this smart object that you've worked on, built, did non-destructive stuff to, and then you can say at the end, okay, I'm done with it being a smart object. I don't need it to be a smart object anymore. And before, your option was flatten it, which you obviously don't want to do. So convert back to layers. We'll convert it into layers again so that I now have the ability to work on them as layers. So that is feature number 7, convert smart objects back to layers, or to layers in the first place. All right, this is another one that's, this one actually I did not know about at first because I was kind of paying attention to other things, but new organization or new improved preset panels. So how many of you ever used the gradient? Hold your hand up. Yes, I've used gradients before. Gradients are awesome. But if you remember, the gradient panel wasn't awesome. It was this thing up here that kind of just like, You're scrolling through them, you're trying to figure them out. Now, if you go to your window menu for things like gradients, there's a whole new gradient panel with all kinds of great presets in it. So if you like purples, you like pinks, you like reds, you like grays, you've got a ton of gradient presets all there, ready to go, ready for you to click on, ready for you to do stuff with. So for example, I can click and put a gradient on what used to be the old penguin. All right, but you get the idea. So just check out the presets. Here, I did one for gradients. Here's another shocker. Here's one that really will be useful in addition to gradients, is shapes. So if you go into your window menu, you come down to shapes. For the first time, you've got this massive, hang on, I'm not looking at it the right way. Hold on, there we go. You've got this massive library of shapes, including more shapes. So you've got leaf trees, you've got wild animals, you've got boats, you've got flowers, and I think I need to reset mine. Restore default shapes, let's do that. Yep, because I'm missing some categories, I believe. Hang on. Oh, still missing some categories. All right. Oh, there they are. Okay, so they came back now. So boats, flowers, wild animals, leaf trees. Oh, no, those are the same ones as duplicated. Somehow I need to reset this panel. Restore, import. Anyway, there should be another set of categories here that you'll probably have. I got to go figure out where mine are. But what are these shapes for? So for example, if I wanted to bring in a different wild animal into the scene, do I have anything that's snowbound? Probably not. So let's do the far opposite. Let's bring in a camel. We get a vector camel shape that again is doing a nice free transform without me holding down the shift key perfectly, without perfectly maintaining the aspect ratio. So the vector shapes are there as organized panels, just like the gradients. So you have the gradients, shapes, and patterns take advantage of those panels now for organization and for working inside of Photoshop. All right, in that vector shape, of course, those shapes come in as their own layer, so you can do whatever you want with. Next up, that was number 8. Here's one that's kind of like I've always done it the old way, so I didn't expect to do it the new way. The new way of making an animated GIF. So if you wanted to make an animated GIF in the past, you go to your timeline, you create a video timeline from your layers. You could go in, you could specify which layer is going to be where. Hang on, let's see here. Because they're twirled up. Okay, there we go, twirl it down. So I could say first, show me the background, then show me the camel. So let's bring the camel out in time. So it's basically like working with a video and the background copy. So, so for example, when I play this, the camel would just appear, and it's a simple 2-layer thing. It's not going to be very exciting. But if you wanted to make that an animated GIF in the past, from whatever you did on that timeline, you would go up and use the legacy save for web. So you do a save, or actually you do an export, save for web, and save for web gave you the choice in the past of working or exporting out a GIF and then whatever size you want it to be. And that still works. But what's better is going up to your file menu now, choosing Save As, onto your computer, and simply choosing GIF for the first time. So if I were to save that out as an animated GIF, I get all my animation controls in it right here for me to do what I wanted to do with it. So let's see, I want to make this web version. And so the ability to save out an animated GIF directly, as well as, I just want to check one more thing here. Saving your timeline out as an animated GIF. I just wanted to check to make sure I wasn't missing one more thing. Okay, so easier save as GIF from Photoshop. So that's number 9. Number 10, and this is one that I expect you guys to use kind of going forward. It's going to be a big thing. And that is when you want your Photoshop documents on your other devices. So we came out with Photoshop on the iPad, version 1, getting started. And if I wanted to work on this penguin some more on the iPad, well, instead of me having to save it to my computer or figure out how to transfer it to my iPad, we have Cloud Docs now built in. So when I do a save as, you saw the dialog box briefly, it gave me the option, just how to do this window, which you can turn off. But save it to my computer or save it to Cloud Docs. So you still can, of course, save things to your computer, work offline, do things like you always did, but you will now also have the option to save to Cloud Docs. So what does that mean? When I choose Save to Cloud Docs, I get the option to create a folder, put things, organize them the way I want, and save them to the cloud. So when I choose this and hit save, it will save that locally first and then upload it to Creative Cloud when I have an internet connection. What does that mean? It means that now when I go to my other computer or my iPad and I launch Photoshop and I choose File Open on any device now, and I say, go to my Cloud Docs to open versus my computer, that penguin and any other documents I've saved to the cloud will be there for me to open and work on. So that's the way that you will work back and forth between platforms, especially mobile and desktop, but even your other computers if you don't want to sync them to a Dropbox or something like that. So still can work locally, don't expect that to change. But you also now have the ability to work in Cloud Docs as well. So those are my 10 things that are new in Photoshop. So quick recap, consistent transform, uncheck, recheck the box, whichever way you want. The new warp capability, which we looked at as well. The new object select tool, the remove background with a single click of a button, which does a 2-step process. The zoom to layer capability, which is great for when you need to see what's on a layer, especially when you get a document from someone else. The enhanced, the enhanced ContentAware fill workspace, convert smart objects to layers, improved presets for gradients, patterns, and shapes, as well as save as GIF and cloud documents. Whew. All right. A lot of things. And there's more. Those are just 10 things. There are a few more enhancements along the way, which you can learn about on the website, but those are my favorite 10 that I thought I would share. All right, so with that said, I know that was kind of a lot to take in, but go play. You guys will have some fun doing it, I'm sure. Go play with it. Yeah, the guys have been working. They're always working. So even though there are features that sometimes seem like, it's okay, or wow, that's really cool, there's always something being worked on. It's just a matter of releasing it when it's ready. So don't take this as, oh, this was it, 10 things, now I got to wait another year. Nope. You'll be getting updates as you have been as soon as those cool things are ready that you're waiting for. And that goes across the board with all of the apps. So I know, for example, for Illustrator and InDesign, there weren't a ton of new things in these two releases, but like last year, there were a ton of things. So it just depends on when the teams get things ready as you would want them to be ready to go. Also, in all of these releases, something that's not easy to demo is that another big thing they worked on, because you have said you wanted this, is power and speed and less crashing, like more stability. So stability is not something I can demo other than it didn't crash. So that's what we want, but that's not a feature that I can really show off. So speed enhancements and performance and stability have been definitely things that got worked on and all across the board in all these apps, especially Illustrator and InDesign, where people said that's what they prefer more than new features in this case. So think about it that way as well. All right, with that said, cheers everybody. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you on the next one. I hope you had fun like I did today, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Don't forget about, oh, wait, one more thing. Don't forget about the daily photography creative challenge that I've been working on since Monday. 9 a.m. Pacific time at behance.net/live. You can go find out about it there. But I've been doing a photography challenge every morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And I'll be doing it the rest of this week and all of next week as well. Join me there for the challenge each morning. Bye, everybody.